you love me, but I don't believe a word from your mouth. That night they caught the fire, the rockets would explode. Well, my best friend says he knows you, and then you're a fucking hoe. So we walked down to the beachside to kill and nearly took my life. I went sand and ground in my teeth, and nothing ever tastes so right, Lord. Hell yeah, the next night down we went drinking, cause we surfed all goddamn day. And that night at the party, you know the ladies are out to stay. Well, I took that road to heaven, but somehow I came and falling back down. If you're thinking you are taught to drink, it only gets passed around, yeah. Did you know this is where I go? This is my road to heaven. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Lord, my road to heaven. Oh, my road to heaven.
Welcome to Interview with the Clayno, where we dive into the history, the origin story behind the Claynosaurs and the goat himself. We have Cab today, aka Nick. What's going on, my brother?
Dude, what is up? I'm super stoked to be here. It's one of the few live streams that I do, so that's really fun. And I was telling you, like, before we started the show, I was like looking at the poster you sent me, and I was gonna ask you, like, oh man, like you have so many niche little things in there. Like I see like an artichoke tree, which you can only know about if you've been like following like my world building leaks. And there's like tacos in there, and just all these like poses from some of our content. So it's kind of dope. And I see the Solana socks there too, so that's hilarious.
I tell you, it's dirty laundry, and I'm sure there's plenty of it. There's plenty of it along the way, but I want to give a shout out to my project artist from Pupils, Juliana, aka Fractal Diva. She prepared this for you, for the Claynos, for the community. I'm a community member myself. I'm a holder, and so I feel honored for you to be on the stream today and trusted me and I told you backstage a moment ago, I'm relatively new to content creation, relatively new to streaming. So, dude, thanks for coming on today, bro.
Oh, dude, it's my pleasure. And seriously, like, you know, when it's a holder, it's always like a no-brainer. But just in terms of any like positive Web3 participants, like we just love to do this, and it's always just a time thing. So if people don't know, it's like Paul's been trying to get me to come on his show, like, oh my god, it's been like at least 4 weeks now, maybe 5 weeks, but every time it's like the timing didn't add up. I had to go to Dubai and then all this stuff, but we're here today, so we're fine.
Dude, patience, man. If there's any lesson to anybody watching right now, it's just patience, right? Just got to be patient. But anyway, man, you know, how I format this thing is really just like past, present, and future. It's absolutely nothing new. I was inspired by other people. I'm sure you guys were inspired also by creating this world that you've created. And, you know, basically what I want to ask is some of the, I want to rewind time a little bit. Okay. The thing that really kind of gets me nostalgic, like those nostalgic feelings, is when I remember my childhood, right? When I remember like gaming with my brother, when I remember like collecting comic books and starting my art journey and my music journey at a very, very young age. Can you rewind time? And I have no idea if anybody else has asked you this, but I've watched a lot of your podcasts, dude, and your interviews, and I haven't not learned that yet. And I would love to ask for you to just rewind time a little bit.
Yeah. So is the question like my inspiration or the stuff I grew up with?
Yeah. Like rewind, like let me know, like okay, what video games did you guys play? Like were you like when did you actually start like your art creation journey, stuff like that when you were a kid?
Oh man, loaded question. Okay, so for video games, a whole slew of video games. I when we were kids, we didn't have a super. So I'm a little bit. I'm 36 right now, so just some context. I We didn't own a Super Nintendo, but we played so much Zelda and Mario at our cousin's place. Eventually, we got a Nintendo 64. So, oh my god, like Ocarina of Time,
Oh,
Perfect Dark, Smash Brothers was like everything. Pokemon Stadium, Pokemon Snap. I was obsessed with Pokemon. Um, when I was younger than that, though, around six, oh, this is so cheesy. It's like the most obvious answer, but like I saw Jurassic Park when I was 6 years old, like the original one. And so that changed everything for me. I became just obsessed with dinosaurs, and I had to have all the toys. And by the way, at the time, like that sort of visual effects or the animatronics they were using, like you had never seen something like that. They looked like real dinosaurs, right? So like as a kid, like I was just obsessed. And then I grew up with things like Littlefoot, or Land Before Time. I also, loved like things like 50 Goes West.
mhm.
I don't know if anybody would know that what that is. It's not
I
the
know
most popular movie.
exactly what that is, bro.
Okay. I love that movie. So I grew up with that kind of stuff, which was really, it was always about characters, and it was about adventure. Um, or obviously it was about, in certain cases, dinosaurs, but yeah. And then obviously, I'm of the demographic that grew up with Toy Story. So that was like super, super influential. And I never thought that one day I'd be, working in that field, but that's what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to direct. I was so inspired by people like Steven Spielberg, and also, um, I must have been, when Lord of the Rings came out, I think I was like 12 years old. So for the next couple of years, also like the Lord of the Rings movies were like everything to me. Like it was so crazy. I love fantasy. Um, and when I got a little bit older, I deep dove into things like Diablo 2, and most of all, so actually I was semi pro for Call of Duty 1. Call of Duty 1, if anybody remembers, was like was like the original one, and it was like World War II. So I was semi pro at Total Nerd, like at the time before like what esports is today. Nowadays it's like you got like $1 million deals, and you're practically like a paid athlete, and it's crazy. Back then it wasn't like that. It was like through forums, and it was like these online leagues, and if you were lucky, if you were like the best of the best, you'd win like maybe a video card. So did that for a little bit, and eventually World of Warcraft, and that was insanely influential to me because it was its own metaverse. It was, you got to meet people online, and you created guilds, and these were people that, in some cases, like I know that Jack on the team's also the same, but it's like we still talk to some of those people that we used to like raid with years and years ago. And it's crazy, and I think that translated a lot to how we tackle Web3 and Twitter, and getting to know people online, and then eventually meeting them IRL, and that kind of vibe. It's really similar, but it was also a lot of that stuff kind of found itself in the way we approached how we thought about Clayno's, extensive world building, focus on characters, things like that, and fantasy tropes.
Absolutely. So, I mean, you talk about, obviously you're an artist, and you came from one of the biggest studios. Can you talk a little bit about your
Yeah.
journey into actually being hired into one of the biggest studios in the world?
Yeah. So, my first, okay. So a lot of people on Web3 don't know this. I did that classic fucking like Hollywood story of like, I went to university for, I thought I wanted to be a director. Like I told you, I didn't get accepted into the university program, which would only take like 16 kids per year. This was in Montreal, but I didn't apply to anything else. It's like if I wasn't going to do that, I wasn't going to do anything else. Like that was my plan, no backup plan. But I was the kid that drew in class and that was doing all these things. And so my, and After Effects and Premiere and shit like that in the early days of Premiere. Um, and So I didn't get into the live action program, which was like a super kind of like niche and sought after program. And but my portfolio was all like drawings and things like that. So then I got a call from them like, "Hey, you didn't get accepted." I was like, "Oh fuck!" Like I have no backup plan for university or college. And they're like, "But actually, we think you'd be a better fit in the animation program." And I was like, "Okay, cool. Like animation. I guess that's like the movies I used to watch and things like that. Like that's all I was like thinking about it at that time. And um and then eventually I, so I accept, I go there. I remember my first day, it was like you had all these students that were just there like animating, and this was old school. This was like they weren't even doing digital animation. They were like, if anybody knows, like if you've ever had a flip book, like a post-it notebook, and you draw those squiggles and then you flip through them, that's basically what they were doing, but like the Disney style. And I was
Like,
like, holy shit.
is that called stop motion?
So technically everything is stop motion, but it's called flipping. So it's like where you flip the pages
Yeah.
between your fingers, but it's like old school Disney stuff. So you're drawing on one sheet, look
Hmm.
at the motion between each sheet, you
Right.
draw on the next sheet. It's a lot of work, but that's how you start off, right? And it was really eye opening for me. And I was like, dude, I could do this. I could crush this. Um, and I quickly realized that the university program was, and I think a lot of people listening to this might also feel the same. College in general, right now, I think the education system is not where it should be overall, and oftentimes it's more theoretical than practical. And in my case, I did college for 2 years, and I quickly realized that I was basically corralled into doing like experimental animation with like charcoal and indie filmmaking, and the things, it's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to go work for Pixar. I wanted to go work for DreamWorks, and that's what I wanted to do, and that's not what they were teaching. And the teachers also couldn't teach that style. They could talk theory, but that's as far as it went.
Mm.
And so I dropped out because I got accepted into an online program. Now, this sounds really normal to people nowadays, like an online school. At the time in 2009, it was not normal. It
It was
was
not cool. It was like
yeah,
ITC tech stuff, right? Like, hey, what?
dude. I remember the questions when I was like, when I was told everybody like, I'm going to quit college, I'm going to do this. But here's the catch: that school was run by a few individuals from Pixar, Disney, and DreamWorks, out in Emeryville, so in San Francisco. And these were a group of artists from those studios that had realized, holy shit, nobody is being coached on how to actually do this for real before they join those companies, what it's like to work in a studio environment, and nobody's preparing these kids, and there's the talent is not there yet. And so that was their thesis. And overnight, I had access to some of the best animators on the planet who eventually became personal mentors, who eventually became people that, got me hired at those places. But I did that program. I like to think I did really well there. Met everybody at, from those studios, like the Pixars and the Disneys. And at that time, dude, I was so wide eyed. It was so cool. Like we would fly out there. I would get to go see movies like Tangled at Disney, and for me, it was like, oh my god, this is like the coolest place on earth. Eventually, you realize it's just a job, but I wasn't there yet. And so when I graduated from that program, um, it was like students that were coming from that school were seen as like the gold standard of students in animation. So it was easy to have a conversation with studios, but you got to understand Netflix was starting out, so it's not like content was heavily commoditized, and there was only so many movies coming out per year in theaters, so the jobs still weren't that easy to find. And for me, it's like I didn't want to take no for an answer, so most of the jobs in Canada, anyways, were in Vancouver because because Pixar had just opened Pixar Canada. There was tax incentives, whatever, and it was proximity to Los Angeles that helped a lot. So a lot of the studios had satellites up in West Canada, and I moved there. One of the most expensive cities. I moved there basically with no money, thinking like an idiot I was gonna get that job. I was gonna go knock on studio doors, all that kind of shit. And I actually slept on the couch for a couple weeks of Fred, who before the Artifact drama was actually their animation supervisor. So we know each other pretty well. This is like the Artifact, like Nike and the NFT project.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so I went to Vancouver with no money. Flash forward, I'm applying to all these places. There's no work. It was tough. It took about 8 months to get a job, and between that time, I had an eviction notice. Like it was like, dude, I couldn't even afford to stay. I remember like the day I got my offer from Sony, which was like I couldn't have hoped for a better job offer. It was fucking Sony. I was obsessed with movies like Surf's Up. So Sony did Surf's Up. They were at the time doing Hotel Transylvania. They had done Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. They were known as like the studio that takes risks and does really interesting things. Eventually, they did Spider-Verse. So they usually set the standards, because oftentimes Pixar has their style. That's what they do. Disney has their style. That's what they do. Sony always tried different styles. So it was seen as like, dude, if you're going to work somewhere as an animator, you go to Sony. And I got the job. And I remember it's like I was basically packing my bags. I get a call from them, and uh, basically they're just like, "Hey, come in." I had a previous interview with them weeks before. It didn't pan out because they actually didn't need the people. And then I get a call back, and they're like, "Hey, could you come into the studio like in 30 minutes?" I was like, "Dude, I can be there in 5 minutes." I remember I like ran over, and again, I'm ready to like take a flight back home, all that kind of stuff. And I go there, and instead of it being an interview, they pitch me the next project that they'd like me to work on, and the supervisor there and the director take me through it. It wasn't the best movie ever, but it was my first, so I loved it. It was Oz the Great and Powerful. It's actually a pretty shitty movie, but yeah, so it was going to be on the visual effects side of things. So that's how I started. And then the rest was history. Then I grew really fast. I was one of only, it was a team of 200 animators. I was one of only 3 juniors hired. And at that time, like this is pre-COVID, so you have to be at the studio. It was fucking terrifying. I was like next to superstars that were infinitely better than me. The irony is some of these.
I gotta ask you really quick. I gotta ask you
Yeah.
because you're sitting, you get hired on, right? You go to this interview,
Yeah.
and they just like are throwing Oz at you, whatever you were working on at the time, right? So
Yeah.
I gotta ask you, was there any element of like fake it till you make it with this, where
Yeah.
you really didn't understand what you were doing, but you had to like put up that facade a little bit, like, okay, I got this, guys.
Oh, dude, I was shitting bricks every day. And by the way, Sony was notorious. A lot of studios were notorious for this, but like they wouldn't tell you when your end date was. And at that time, it was very like short contract. And they would sometimes like everybody had phones at their desk, and people would get like phoned, and it was like their last day. Like that was just standard. And so the environment was kind of terrifying. I made it. I made it more than a year over there, and I left because I had an opportunity elsewhere. But yeah, the fake it till you make it thing. I knew I had talent, and I knew I could do it, but I also knew like fuck, I don't know anything, right? It's kind of, if you're an artist, you struggle a lot with crippling, not anxiety, but imposter syndrome. You never think what you're doing is good enough. That's just how it is. Whether you're a perfectionist or otherwise, but also when you're sitting next to the guys and what they're doing, and you can see their screens, you're like, oh my God, like I'm never going to be able to do that. I was sitting next to, so the irony is some of those guys are now working with Claynos. And so it's a whole full circle thing. But I was sitting next to like the Jorge, who is doing some of our craziest clips on Claynosaurus. He was the guy that did the shot, like, it's so fluffy and Despicable Me. And I had like half the guys next to me had worked previously at like Pixar or Despicable Me, or they had done Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. So I was like, oh my God, I do not belong here. And then I grew really fast. I hustled. I must have, in my first couple months, I must have worked, at one point I worked like 37 days straight. So like, overtime during the week, and then full days on Saturday, Sunday. I was paying my dues. I was nervous as fuck. I was trying to be the best I could be. And I've been very lucky in my career to grow pretty fast and hustle. So eventually I left Sony to go work at the time MPC, which was the studio that was behind stuff like Wrath of the Titans and some really cool shit. And they were going to work on X-Men, and it was going to be at in Montreal. So I was like, oh my God, like, dude, I'm definitely coming back home to work on movies. Like, I didn't even know that was going to be a thing. So I did that, moved in with fun fact with Andrew. So at the time, we were both like 20, 22 or 23. And Andrew, who's now CEO of Clayno's and one of my best friends, he was starting his life in finance and emerging markets and things like that. And again, another full circle story. Um, and so then I very quickly, I was so young when I became an animation supervisor. I think I was like 26, which meant that so, that I was running animation teams for movies or for TV. And this would be like the team. So I would dictate like, okay, and you'd have conversations with the director or with, whoever you're working with. It's HBO or Paramount, whatever. Like, okay, how do these creatures move? What's the motion language? All that kind of stuff. And you're there orchestrating the team that's bringing these things to life. So I did that, and I started out having those types of leadership positions when I was 26, and that was fucking terrifying because you're gonna have artists that are way older than you, and you're the young guy that I'm sure it's like what Michael Jordan had dealt with, right? Like you're the young guy trying not to overprove yourself, but you're there for a reason and you have the knowledge, and it's a very difficult exercise to feel like you belong and feel like you should be leading team members that are older or more experienced than you. And over time, I got more and more comfortable with it, and you learn leadership skills and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of that, so much of those lessons I bring back in how we operate Claynos. But yeah, that's the spiel.
I have to interject right here, if I may. And you brought something up that's really, really super interesting, and that I noticed is prevalent in Web3 right now. And that is the younger generation. I actually made a post about it the other day about it because my post went something like this. It was like, most of the mentors that I've found most value with in Web3 are half my age. It's very, very weird, right? So like, I didn't grow up with a phone in my hand. I'm 46, by the way. I'm a little older than you, but I didn't grow up with like internet or anything like that. So like social media is a little bit different. It's a little bit different, a little bit unique for me. And so most of the people that I meet have grown up with that, and they've taught me a lot. So like, here's a question for you is like, I mean, obviously it's like, when there's the younger crowd right now that you hire on, or that you run into, do you really find age being that big of a deal when it comes to mentorship and who you hire in Claynos?
Yeah, no, we almost never look at age. Oftentimes the question is this person a right fit, and can that person be molded? Is more of the question, and that's more of an experience thing. It's like, does this person show potential to grow, and do they show potential for what we need them to do right now? Those kinds of things. And actually, honestly, like, it's really good to be working with the young guns that are hungry. One, because they're hungry, but also, if you're thinking social media, they fucking get it. They get it. They get the meta, and you learn from them as well. And so, yeah, I don't think that's as much of a difference. The only caveat I would say is, you're older too, so you would understand. But it's like, when you're young, you don't necessarily. There's a lot of lessons you haven't learned. There's a lot of soul searching to be had. So these are things you just expect, right? It's like a person might change over time and grow into something, but yeah, it's not really an issue.
Yeah, absolutely. A little bit of lore here. I mean, you mentioned like getting to meet some people from Disney and stuff like that. I've been an artist all my life, and I've watched all the movies that you previously, talked about. Five goes west, right? Nowadays, Five goes and stuff like that. Land Before Time, and I got to actually see behind the scenes, but it wasn't like over at Disney, by the way, because I actually live in Southern California, so I'm right by Disneyland, and it's not exciting by any means. It's actually the boring part of Disneyland. It's the architects and engineers department.
Yeah,
because I'm a land.
It's the Imagineering kind of.
The Imagineering, yeah. So like, I got to basically, I'm a professional land surveyor. So I'm not sure if you know what that is, but it's the guys who like stand there with a tripod and look through the glass and measure
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
That's what I
yeah.
do for a living. I've owned my own business for like 20 years. And
That's
so
so
we've
cool.
done a lot of work on the back lot and also the main Disneyland and California Adventure and stuff like that, where we have to like do ADA compliance surveys because, just so there's not like a half of an inch step down where somebody freaking twists their ankle and sues Disney or something like that. So
Yeah,
we've had to do a lot of stuff, but just a little bit of lore about me. I didn't get to see the exciting stuff about Disneyland, but I got to go meet the engineers and architects behind the scenes. But I want to move forward a little bit, and I want to ask you. You mentioned that you live with Andrew, and he's the founder CEO
yeah,
of Claynos. So that right there, living with him, I think it fits perfect into segueing into the creation, the origin story of where Claynos came from. Obviously inspired by Land Before Time and maybe Jurassic Park, as you said. But can you tell me a little bit about that?
yeah. Okay, so how do I start? So just creating Claynos. It was a bunch of artists coming together. So a friend of mine and colleague, Dan Cabral, had sketched. It was basically napkin sketches, but he also had like one kind of half finished piece of content on his Instagram that had like no views, and it was basically the original Claynosaurs. They didn't look exactly like what they look today. But it was the Claynos that he had done for his little boy. Like he was just inspired to make this little personal piece, and he had these dreams of making these dinosaurs for his kid, and I was already degenning, so I was already ingrained in definitely in the one-on-one art space on Solana. I had collected some ETH projects. I was into things like Maury's, Deadfellas, those teams, and I was also like on Solana. My brother was into SMBs, like deep into that and things like that. I'm a collector, so I was a little bit of a DJ, and I was understanding NFTs, and for me, it was an absolute no brainer. As a person that buys gun skins, that has collected things in World of Warcraft or whatever, it made so much sense. And I was like, holy shit! Like for the first time in history, you can tokenize and sell animation as well. So, I was trying to wrap my head around all the things we could be doing, and eventually kind of snowballed and said, wait a minute, like there's a lack of quality in the space. Everyone talks about attempting to brand build. I think we can fucking pull this off. And this was like the start of COVID. So I remember going up to Dan and going like, Dan, NFTs, do you know anything about them? And he's like, actually, dude, and by the way, back then you used to talk, and still today you talk to like artists, like Web2 artists about NFTs, and they're like, fuck you, I don't want to hear it, right? But Dan was like, dude, I've been looking at it too, like, yeah, sure, let's talk. And I was like, your dinosaurs, they weren't called Claynosaurs. I was like, I think maybe there's something there if we could just tweak the designs and figure this out. And so then we had this like Avengers arc of knocking on like friends' doors and calling up the right people, and started to build a team behind the scenes. And we were calling all our buddies from all over the place. And the first person we called was Dan Jervis, who's basically one of the three people that run all the art direction and creative direction on the team. And he basically took the characters, he redesigned them. He was coming from like fresh off of like Lego movies and stuff like that. So, and he's a phenomenal 2D drawer. And actually, he wanted to do that. He didn't want to animate anymore. He's like, I just want to do character design, that kind of stuff. So it kind of made sense. So we pitched him the whole thing, and then the Claynos were born. And we were like, man, let's figure out like 6 species. Let's think of all these like collectible patterns. We were deep diving on all the things that were working from existing collections and the things that we felt weren't working. We were asking ourselves, like, how could you build a collection that is like engineered to trade and collect, the way we had experienced it, from Pokemon cards or Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I was big into Yu-Gi-Oh cards. And pogs and shit like that. And we felt that a lot of collections weren't actually considering gamified collectability. They were considering, okay, let's create a character with a bunch of crypto native traits and randomness, and then that's it. And we're like, dude, if you can create a system where you look at the whole thing, and we call it a program, like you look at the program, and you're like, I want that, and actually I want this and that too. Like we had this vision of what does it look like when this thing gets listed on Magic Eden, right? Like Labubu or like Pop Vinyl, when you walk in a store and you see all those things lined up together in a shelf, the feeling you get, or like Miffy's the same, the feeling you get is shit, I can't just buy one. Like I want that one, and I want the one with this sort of hat, but I just want all the red ones, but in different little SKUs. So that's what we were thinking, and that's how we built the collection. As far as Andrew's concerned, Andrew came in after Mint, and so Andrew's arc of becoming a DJ, he was already looking into crypto things, but he was looking into crypto because of what he was doing. He was working in emerging markets, financing, those kinds of things, like whether it's like soybeans, things like that in like Brazil, even Ukraine, and so he was no stranger to uncharted waters, and he was looking at crypto because of and NFTs because of the authentication that it could provide. You can authenticate and have proof of container or delivery or things like that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And he comes from a business background. His father comes from a business background. He had built his own startup, everything, and so Andrew was an advisor to us leading up to Mint, and mostly from the business side, because the one thing we didn't want to do is be cocky and be like, dude, we're artists. Like we don't know, we know how to lead a team. What do we know about business, right? And so we knew we needed the help, but we needed the help from someone that we could trust, which what I've observed in the space is that is such a rarity. You see a lot of drama with founding artists that bring on a CEO, and then a year later or 2 years later it just doesn't work. Like that story has happened a bajillion times in Web3, and I'm not going to name the projects, but you guys know which projects I'm talking about. It's like basically every project. And so we needed someone that all the artists could trust, that we knew no matter what decisions he's making, although we make decisions together, has everybody's best interest at heart, but also can navigate the waters that we wanted to explore, which was like, dude, we're going to go up against the big boys. Like we're going to build a brand that is going to compete, on the Web2 level. And we want to become one of the big players in Web3. And in order to do that, we need to make sure that like we're doing everything right. And we got someone that can help strategize those things and negotiate the deals and all that kind of stuff. So Andrew has been probably one of the most important onboards into the company. He changed everything, absolutely everything, and everybody on the team like loves him. Everybody that meets him is like, dude, this guy's next level. It's gone pretty well, but I grew up with him. So to answer the question of living with him is, we've been best friends since we were 13 years old, and so I've known him well over maybe now it's like 22 years. Yeah, 22 years. And I there's so much trust within the team, and it's so important, especially when you're operating in an ecosystem that's so volatile, and everything's up one week, it's down the next week, and there's a lot to deal with. So it's very important for the team to have a lot of trust and synergy, and so that's the way we hire. But with Andrew, it's been amazing because we've been friends since we were kids. The deal we made when we did this was no matter what happens, everything is just business, and the other stuff is siloed. So that's so we're very careful with that. But it's been an incredible 3 years, like, and it just gets better and better.
That's awesome, man. And when you were just talking about that, the word that came to mind was trust, and I'm really happy you mentioned that, because that's the question I was actually gonna point that out. Trust is such a huge deal, and it's hard nowadays with not having like social media, Web3, stuff like that. You don't really get that IRL connection. That you have to actually go outside of your comfort zone and travel halfway across the world to these events to gain that IRL connection with people, and just to solidify that trust. So that's huge. I want to kind of segue the conversation a little bit. And you mentioned a little bit about your origin into Web3, but I would like to actually get into that more. I don't know if anybody really knows the origin story about you actually getting into Web3. You mentioned that you're a DJ, and you mentioned that you're a holder of some projects and stuff like that, and that's how you ultimately got the idea to create Claynos. But could you talk about the origin story of how you were introduced to Web3?
Yeah. So it was Sasha and my brother, and Sasha Plapasaur is one of the co-founders of Claynos, and he acts as COO. And him and my twin brother, actually, they they've been crypto native for a very long time, and they were delving into NFTs. I think they started on Ethereum, but they very quickly went into Solana. This was, oh my God, it must have been like 2020 or something. I don't remember when. Yeah, 2020 or maybe 2019. And my brother specifically was super into SMB, Solana Monkey Business, and Monkey DAO, and the whole thesis that you could have a sort of decentralized country club, um, and business savvy minds coming together to figure the shit out, I think was very powerful for him. And also just the degeneracy of collecting is something that definitely spoke to those guys. But they were delving into NFTs, and I had I don't remember the first time I heard about NFTs, but it must have been the news or something. It was like, man, 2018 ish, early days. But I remember my brother showing me his SMBs and telling me how much they were worth, and I was like, I was like, shut the fuck up, man. Like, there's no way, right? And but at the same time, I also knew that like gun skins on CS were just as expensive, if not more. So I was like, okay, like that's something, but why are they so expensive? And then he explained to me the whole thesis of provenance, of the flex mechanisms for crypto natives, and you're buying into something that you might be holding a piece of history, all the whole kind of spiel. And I was like, man, that's cool. And then he explained to me, it's like what really spoke to me as well is like the access pass into a niche community that also has access to information and whatever. And so it was like, yeah, a country club. I totally get that spiel. And he was like, it's kind of like if you can buy a pass into the most exclusive golf club in the world, but when you want to stop playing golf, you can sell that pass and it doesn't, and like someone else can be using it, right? Like, I was like, yeah, like that.
Equity in a private golf club.
Yeah, but more of like a membership that can be traded. And then of course, based on how many people want to join that club but can't join that club, they have to wait for a pass to be sold, and that like meant something to me. And then the 101 is where it really got sold. So I had one of my best buddies, Maxwell, was making art on Instagram, and he wanted to give it a try. So we went onto Solana. So I started collecting on Ethereum. That was just the thing to do. But I quickly got converted to Solana because of those communities, and specifically the 101 community, which at the time, like exchange art had just started. Holoplex, oh my God, if anybody remembers Holoplex, this was like pre-Magic Eden. And that's where you would do auction houses. The Boogles were just starting out, and the auctions for the Boogles were still happening. It was nuts. But I remember a lot of friends getting into the 101 space, and I was getting to meet a lot of current 101 artists, whether it was like John Lay or those guys. And that really spoke to me. And I was like, man, why not? This makes so much sense. And I had seen DK do his incredible like animated short films and obviously sell them for insane amounts of money. But I was like, man, you go. Like, that is awesome. And it made a lot of sense to me. Eventually, I met people like Robbie Shillstone that came into the space. Joyce eventually worked and works with Claynos. And that was kind of my degen arc. I was basically buying 101 art, and I was buying into certain communities. I wasn't sitting on any sort of Solana bag or whatever. So I was just like degenning where I could. But that's how I learned the lay of the land. And then I would get injected in those communities. I would make friends. That's that whole MMORPG or World of Warcraft origin story. That was so natural for me to make friends online. Like, it was super natural. And and yeah, that's how it happened. And then we spent the greater part of the team that's crypto native. We spent over a year injecting ourselves into the community, figuring out what works, what doesn't, what speaks to people, degenning ourselves in order to understand, hey, if we're going to make an NFT project, the last thing we want to do is be like those Web2 idiots that come in and are extractive and come out and that's it. We're like, no, like we're going to become Web3 natives, and then we're going to do this shit right, and we're going to use our Web2 acumen to actually make something of this. But it doesn't mean we're going to go like there's something here. And I think the biggest mistakes that Web2 companies do is they leave so much opportunity on the table by coming in, taking, and leaving. And the opportunities to pre-package a brand with diehard culture, like you can't pay for that. Like you can't. And so that's a huge opportunity that those companies leave on the table.
I gotta ask you. You said two things right now. You said you want to do this right, and you mean you don't want to just come in like a Web2 brand and be extractive. You want to actually bring value, and you want to create do it right with the culture of Web3, which and also you mentioned the table. Okay, now the table where my mind automatically went to is an interview that you just recently did with Luca and Zagabond and the dude from Doodles. I'm so sorry. I'm going blank on his name. Please help
It's
me.
awesome.
Okay. I'm so sorry. But I mean, you're sitting at the table with some of the biggest brands in Web3 in the world right now, really. How does it feel, man? How did it feel sitting around the table with these guys and actually bringing some value to the conversation? Because I tell you what, man, out of the people that were there, man, I found myself locking in with all of you. But I mean, you really have a lot of good things to say. No glazing, just facts. So how does it feel, man? How does it feel sitting there among the goats of the space?
It's the hypnotic red beard, isn't it? No. So basically,
It
it
is.
feels natural. It just feels right. Like we knew what the fuck we were doing when we came. Sorry, there was a lot of soul searching, and not everything was perfect, but we had a master plan, and we knew that our product was so fucking good, and we just got to do it right, and play the right cards, and we'll get there. Starting out on Solana, a week after FTX, in an ecosystem that for whatever reason equates floor price to the importance of a project. That part was tough to navigate, but we clawed our way past all that noise, and eventually were rightfully so considered a tier one IP in the broader Web3 ecosystem. Because the product's so good and because we're making all the right moves, and we're about to announce so many things, so that'll make sense. But it feels right. And I think that there's a lot of, we see each other as peers. I have immense respect for someone like Luca because he's throwing in a Web3 marketing masterclass. And he hustles, man. He works his ass off. And then Austin, I vibe with so much. We met each other, I can't remember the first time I met Austin. I think it was the last IRL. It must have been the last NFT New York, but we vibed right away. Both of us have very similar ethos on what we're trying to do with our respective brands and what we're trying to bring to the table. So there's a lot of mutual respect. And Zagabond, that was the first time I finally met him IRL at that roundtable in Paris. Again, lots of vibes. And I think that all of these founders are really, navigating the same kind of choppy waters, I don't want to say trying to figure things out, but it's a nascent ecosystem, and having the support of other founders that are also trying to figure out how to navigate those same waters helps a lot. And so in my experience in the last 3 years in Web3, believe it or not, there's insane amounts of mutual respect for other founders, and a lot of other founders are talking to each other. For IP, there's not much competition, and what I mean by that is, two wallets technology, they compete against each other. I'm either using, Phantom, or I'm using Backpack. In some cases, if I'm a full-blown degen, I might be using both platforms for different reasons, but most users will pick one browser, right? Like they'll pick Chrome or they'll pick Safari or whatever, or nobody picks Edge. But uh, so um, but for IP, I can love Claynos as much as I can love Azuki, and I can love Pudgies, and I can love Doodles, and I can love Forgotten Runes and Chimpers, and all of those guys. They can all exist in my brain, and I can consume all them, and I can buy all the plushies. It's fine, and I think that's very true in the Web3 IP. So the way a lot of the guys see it is, yeah, of course you gotta focus on making your brand like as hot as it possibly can be, as on demand as it can be, but rising tides lift all boats, and that's very true here.
I gotta ask you, I gotta ask you. So derivatives. What's your take on derivatives? Do you think that they're extractive, or do you think that there's a place for them in the space?
Yeah, I think that they're extractive, and the reason is it depends on who's running them, but one, it's so fucking low effort for the price that you're asking, and oftentimes it's rare that I've seen derivative teams, unless you I'm trying to think of one, but derivative teams that have gone to market, done a mint, and not disappeared months later. Um, so someone that is willing to put so little effort in a product release is most likely not going to put effort when it gets difficult. So that's my thought on derivatives. I could be wrong, but I just feel it's like, dude, if you're asking for money from people, of course you're selling a membership club, which in theory is what many NFT projects offer on top of the collectible aspect, but like do an effort, like, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So a moment ago, you said when it gets difficult. So I got to ask, we got to bring a little bit of drama into this. We're like 45 minutes into the show, man. Like, what's some of the most difficult things that you've had to deal with? Like being a founder, is it dealing with community members? Is it dealing with fluctuations of price? Like, I know we're not going to get into any of the price action at all, but I'm just saying, like, what is the most difficult thing that you see as being a founder, what you've experienced so far running Claynos?
Yeah, I think having the ability to see past the noise, if you understand where your North Star is and not getting distracted away from that, even though sometimes the holders might not see what you see or have the same context, you're doing it for them. And if the goal is to make Claynos a super brand because it is good for everybody involved, sometimes you got to make tough decisions that are not what the holders want to see right now. Whether it's like, oh, they want staking yesterday and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's kind of like filtering out the noise. But you're also building a startup, and you're building a startup in public, and even like you can't always be transparent about everything, because in our line of work, we're an entertainment company. Sometimes when we're trying to strike partnerships with other big brands, there's NDAs and there's press embargoes, which means you can't talk about it until, you know, like a magazine has talked about it, because they have the right of, they get to go first, and if that goes out into the open, then you ruin the press release. Things like that get really difficult, because like, guys, you got to trust that we're doing this. And so part of the exercise is figuring out how to keep the community aspect alive while you're working on hitting these big milestones for the company. So you set these goals, but in between those goals, you gotta. I remember one of the best collectors and holders that we have always called it the drip of trust. And I think in the space, what that means is you need to survive long enough and create such a positive experience for holders that most people are like, dude, it's a vibe to be a holder, and I can be patient. I trust that the team is trying to do their best to make this like the best brand it can be, and I'm just going to ride the wave. And I'm not so focused on what does the price look like today, what does it look like tomorrow, whatever. I'm just vibing because I'm a part of history, and it's fun to be a part of this community, and all that kind of stuff, and I'm proud of it. And so we think a lot about that. There was a lot of soul searching in the beginning because we were going so fast while we were trying to figure out how do we set the right foundations for our company in an ecosystem where the world is falling apart every second week. So I think that was all of those put together make it extremely difficult. And then wanting to do right by everybody is really tough. Like I'm a people pleaser. I have a moral compass. Sometimes it's hard where you want to make sure that people know that, we're doing our best to make sure that everybody feels a part of this journey. Everybody feels seen. It's not always easy. And that everybody understands what the goals are. And I think, this desire to make everybody happy is something that you got to work on, because your priority number one is protect the brand at all costs, and all the other things will follow suit.
So you mentioned drip of trust. That seems like it needs to be added into the lore, brother. It needs to be a
I didn't coin
location. It needs to
it.
be, I don't know, it just needs to be a location in Clayno's world, the drip of trust,
Yeah,
or maybe like a freaking piece of lore. I don't know, but maybe the
it
book.
made so much sense to me, dude. It's like one of our best holders, like was kind of gave me his spiel on how he saw, like, because a lot of the big whales that we have are very understanding. Some of them have built businesses, some of them are CEOs. They're understanding of how long it takes to build something like what we're building, and an engine and all the things that come with being a startups. And dude, a lot of startups fail. We're in our third year and we're kicking ass. Like already that we should be like applauding ourselves. But um their thesis, it wasn't just him, it was a few whales. It was like, look, in this ecosystem, you have to prove resiliency, and you have to prove that you're not going to go anywhere. Like you're here to stay, and sometimes they don't have all the context, and but you are working on these bigger activations, and you are working on all these things that are going to make the brand amazing, and you're working on these things that are going to make holders happy, but it can't happen all at once. It's like, you know so I think that was something that really resonated with me for sure. So the drip of trust. Yeah.
Drip of trust, man. Yeah. So you talked about activations, and that kind of leads us into the present but future of what you guys are currently working on right now. And so you guys are working on Popkins. It's all done. It's ready to go. People are picking their classes. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I know, I mean, I've been to many of your spaces. I'm sure a lot of the viewers, by the way, 329, it's only been going up and to the right. Let's F and go. But can you tell me a little bit and tell everybody a little bit about Popkins and what they need to do with the classes and what to expect here in the next few weeks? Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
Oops. Okay, so I'm going to keep this as cohesive as I can be. There's a running gag. We're making a lot of jokes on like the complexity of the mint, but it's actually pretty simple. Um, it's a booster pack system, right? So we're trying to spice it up for how we think mints should be. So um, you buy a booster pack, and in that booster pack, you either get a Popkin, which are new characters, or you don't. If you get a Popkin, great, you minted, you have one, amazing. If you don't get a Popkin, so you have like a mystery booster pack that doesn't contain one, um, then you get your money back. But there's other shit that you get in that extra booster pack, and there's like collectibles, there's maybe store discount, things like that. But there's also a mini game that you're playing, which is these chaser cards that are soulbound, and they're called escape cards. And if you manage to collect all, I think there's 10 of them, you get a special achievement for our achievement system, which has future repercussions. But also, there's going to be a leaderboard for pity points, which is essentially like the biggest losers. So the people that aped into all these booster packs and might not have gotten Popkins or as many, but they get a lot of pity points. There's 50 Claynosaurs that we're giving away throughout this mint. And so anybody on that leaderboard, so I think it's like the top 50 of that leaderboard are going to get a free Clayno, like an OG Clayno. So we're trying to create this whole fun gotcha system.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, there's two different kinds of booster packs, and you don't know what you're going to get. If there's no Popkin, you get your money back, which means you can get as many packs as you want. And if you're not minting a character, or for every pack that doesn't have a character, it's like whatever, you're going to get your money back. And yeah, like that's the primary system. So 2 packs, one with a character, one maybe not. It's this fun gacha system. if you have an OG Claynosaur or any of the Genesis Claynosaurs, so that's both the Saga collection, so the Parasaurs and the Spinos, or the original six species, seven species, then if you class up those characters, you get a guaranteed popkin no matter what. If you don't class them, you still get a free booster pack, or at least your first free booster pack, but there's no guarantee. It's a mystery pack, so you don't know if you're going to get a popkin in there or not. Obviously, you haven't paid for those packs, so in that situation, if you don't get a popkin, you don't get your money back because there was no money. So that's basically the core mechanics, and there's a lot of other kind of like surprises that are coming, but we really wanted to create a fun mechanic, one in which people can have fun degenning, but there's not much repercussion. We wanted a gamified experience. We wanted to throw in side collectibles like memorabilia collectibles that kind of signify that you were a part of this man. So those are the chaser cards. There's a slew of things, and the UX is, oh man, it's so cool. It's so cool. And speaking of derivative collections, if you notice anything about us, every time we do something, it's like something new. And our first collection was so complex. The Popkins are so different from the Claynos, but they're also super different from each other. We're hitting the ground running. We've got 9 species. Each of those species have different body shapes, or like different skews within that species. Different, we're calling them mutations. It's kind of like traits, like different types of ears, horns, things like that. They're all animated. Dude, it's so dope. And this one is really, it's built for gamified collecting, the way we had thought about the Clayno collection, but we've learned a lot. So this time it's a little bit next level.
And we have a popkin up here somewhere. I'm not sure if people can see it,
Yeah,
but there's
it's right
a
over
popkin hidden in there somewhere. Definitely some pizza too. I think we saw that somewhere in the lore. But so with regards to people selecting their classes, as I said before, I'm a holder. It's something that I am excited about because it looks like I'm going to get some popkins as long as I select my class. I went
Yeah.
on the website the other day and I noticed that there's a few different classes to choose from. Is it going to be kind of like one of these systems where you can just choose any class and they're all the same, or is there going to be it's going to be revealed at a later date that some of the classes that you chose may benefit more than others?
Okay, so the class system is a little bit twofold. You're on one end for the NFT holders that are going to port into the Gameloft mobile game, you'll already have picked your class based on what you pick in the NFT sphere. But it's also status signaling for our achievement system, and it also leads into a different staking model for the when staking is finally released in the next couple of weeks. So classing is almost an amplifier. The class that you select is more of a lore thing. When you're building a video game, the number one thing you want to do is balance. So it's mostly for play pattern more than anything. It's not like you have a substantial advantage. There might be quests that need you to have different types of classes put together, but for the most part, it's not like it's not unbalanced. It's really just it's like my style of playing, or it's kind of the one that speaks to me. For the NFTs, it's also like the armors they'll be wearing and things like that.
Right on. Well, we are at the hour. We're approaching the hour, and I don't want to go past because I know you're super busy. You got some other meetings you got to go to. So the deadline to select the class is May 26th. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, right on. Well, I just wanted to say, man, thank you for coming on today. Is there anything else that you want to talk about? Claynos, Popkins, anything else that you can, a little bit of alpha that you could give out today about anything, or just some reminders for people?
Yeah.
Now is the time to do that.
Oh man. Okay. Well, first, dude, ping me whenever. I'd love to do this again. We'll try to bring on Andrew and the other guys next time. To Alpha, I think a lot of people know this already, but end of the month, we are going to officially really reveal the details of the TV show that we're in production for, and we've been talking about it. I announced it on stage at Sui that we are like officially making a TV show, but this time it's going to be like really out in the open, and there'll be press and all that kind of stuff. So that's some alpha there, and there'll be a lot of details, and we're actually working on how to integrate Popkins into that. And then I don't know if this is alpha, but June 11th, we are going to host a headlining event at the Annecy Animation Festival. And that is like, it's the equivalent of the Cannes Film Festival, but it's for animation. This is where like all the big studios come to showcase the new brands that they're working on, or premiere their new films, or even buy new IP or whatever. And we are doing like the big party over there. Of course, we're having holders there.
And where's that? Is that New York? Where is this?
No, that's Annecy in France.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's literally like the Cannes Film Festival. But so we're going there, and that one we're really excited about, because we're going to be onboarding a lot of Web2 native artists. There's a lot of fun activations we're doing, and it's almost like Clayno's like Web2 coming out party of sorts, and it should be really dope. It's literally like, this is like the mecca for anything animation, and we're so proud to be doing that. And so that should be really cool. That'll be June 11th.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible. Well, man, dude, I just got to say, thank you so much for coming on today, dude. It's been a freaking full-filled hour. I don't think that we got to cover as much, so I have to take you up on the opportunity.
Yeah, we'll do a part two, dude.
Interview with the Clayno 2.0. I want to talk more about Sui and some other things that I have on the docket here. Some questions that I have, but dude, thanks so much for coming, brother.
Yeah, really, I can do like maybe next week or the week after, like before Mint, if you want to talk about like Sui and things like that. We'll make it happen.
Awesome. I would absolutely love to meet the boys. So yeah, let's talk for 1 minute backstage. Just want 1 more minute of your time, but thank you so much for everybody that tuned in. We got 357 people. Damn. Absolutely amazing. We got some people that said, hi, I just want to, say hello to Honeybee, give him some shout outs. My boy Evolve, absolutely just a freaking goat in the space. But thank you so much. This is Paul. We got Cab, interview with the Clayno, and you heard the man. Interview with the Clayno 2.0 might be coming soon, maybe even as soon as next week. Anyway, peace out.
I took that run to heaven, but somehow I came falling back down. Well, that night on the beach, you said you love me, but I don't believe a word from your mouth. That night they caught the fire, the rockets would explode. Well, my best friend says he knows you, and that you're a fucking hoe.